Hey folks, welcome to the channel and welcome to the Viking Challenge. And this is what I'm gonna be building. And it's gonna take all of that steel. Let's get busy.
I'm going to be making this sword out of a really complex mosaic damascus pattern. This pattern came from mastersmith Niels Vandenberg, and he allowed me to use it in this video. I'll be showing all the steps to make this pattern, but if you want his pattern guide, there's a link down in the video description. To create this pattern, we need to end up with a billet that looks like this. So we're going to actually make 3 billets, each of these layers. Here we're starting with this one. Each of the 3 starting stacks are the same, and they start out like this. After forge welding this stack together, I'm going to forge it down into a bar that looks something like this. Now I'm using squaring dies to knock in the corners, because we want it to look something like this. Now I've rotated it 90 degrees. We're going to square it up, and now we want it to look something like this. For this billet, now we have the pattern we want. Now we're just going to draw it out into a long square bar and then cut it up into 3, and that's going to give us the top portion of our final billet. After I've got this bar all done, I'm going to repeat this process again to do the bottom portion. Now I'm going to do the middle portion of our final billet. So again, we'll start with our same starting stack. Before I draw it out, I'm going to knock in the corners again. We need this billet much wider, so we got to do this early. And now, like before, I've rotated the billet 90 degrees, and now I'm starting to squish it down, but we need a really wide bar this time. I've got this forged down into the size I want. I'm just trying to square up the corners so it's easier to restack it later. After some time on the surface grinder, we've got everything squared up. We're ready to put our final billet together.
So here's the billet all stacked up. This is 6 inches long, 2.5 inches square. This is a lot of steel. You can kind of see the pattern in there. Now it's time to weld this up, get it in the forge.
I spent quite a few heats just forge welding this big billet together. Now I'm knocking in the corners on this billet, but this time I'm going to fully re-square it because I want it to go from this to this. Now I've got a long bar with the pattern you see here. I'm going to cut that into 4, arrange it like this, and forge weld that together. Just like the last step, I'm drawing this out to a long bar, cut it up into 4, and go from this to this. This bar represents the final version of our pattern. The problem is the pattern is on the end of the billet. So the next step is to slice this up and tile it.
So here we are so far. This is the bar all ready for tiling. It is about 12 inches long. It's about an inch, about 7/8 of an inch thick, and just over, an inch and 5/8 wide, which is good because we need it taller than wider. We're going to be cutting tiles like this, and then after we press them, we're going to be stretching it out to get the length of the sword. So we're going to be stretching this pattern. That's why I've compressed it a little bit, because we know we're going to uncompress it this way. Now that I got the bar all sliced up, we're going to lay them out flat, alternate, flip every other one, and that'll make all the faces join, and then we're going to lay them all out and get them set up for welding. Here's the tiles, all welded to the sacrificial steel. Now into the forge to make our final mosaic. So here we are after the tile weld. It's still pretty thick, which is good. It's about 21 inches long. I did add about 3 tiles that were mild steel, because this is going to be the tang area, and I didn't want to waste any of this. The weld went good, except for like one area right here. I can still see these, but I don't see them on the other side, and this is the mild steel, so I'm thinking this is probably fine, but this part's still pretty thick, so I'm going to press this in this forge session. In this one, we're going to make it sword-shaped.
It's important to get this one really close to the dimensions of the sword and not cut it out, because we want the pattern to flow down the length of the sword. This is another one of those times I wish I had a big forge. I had to heat this up in sections, and it's a real pain in the butt. Once I got the width I needed using the press, I move over to the rolling mill and stretch this out to get the length I need.
Hey folks, so I'm happy to have this thing finally in sword shape. So it looks really good. I can already see the pattern. We've had enough loss due to scale to take away that cladding that we put on it. So now it's time for a lot of grinding, because she's pretty thick. But gonna get this ground on the surface grinder, and then we'll start to put in our bevels. Viewers often ask me how much waste is there from the scale. So in this build, I decided to keep it. So let's weigh it. My scale only goes out to 100 ounces, so we're going to weigh the cutoff separate. 24 ounces. And now all the scale. That's 73 plus 24, 97 ounces worth of waste. That's over 6 pounds. We started with just over 10 pounds of steel, which kind of makes sense. We got about 4 pounds left in the blade and we haven't done any grinding yet. So folks, that's a lot of waste. So here we are so far. I got the profile all done and it's been surface ground. It is just under a 1/4 inch all the way down. No distal taper yet, but it's looking really good. You guys can even see the pattern a little bit because I've done a test etch. It's kind of hard to see because it's only ground to 36. Now it's time to normalize, do some grain refinements, and then heat treat this, because I don't really want to do the big fuller in the center before heat treat, because I'm worried it's going to twist or warp. So trying to prevent that. So we're going to heat treat it first. So there it is, heat treated and perfectly straight. I did have to spend some time both with the 3-point jig, and you can see from all the little divots with the straightening hammer, but she's dead straight. Time to get grinding. So I've surface ground just this part, just to make sure that I got through any decarb. I'm not worried about here down because there's going to be a distal taper added and it's going to take off all of that surface later. Now I've marked it up with layout lines to know where my fuller is going to go, and then some center lines later when I do the distal taper. I'll just make sure that that's centered. So now we're going to do that central fuller.
To do the fuller, I just clamped the blade to a piece of angle iron so I could move it across the rest and use my 6-inch wheel, and that worked out pretty good. And now I'm using the tapering feature on my mag chuck and the surface grinder to put that distal taper in. And now over to the mill to square up the shoulders. Remember folks, this is a challenge between all these participating YouTube channels. You get to vote for your favorite build. Your votes and these judges will help determine who wins. There's a link to the voting form down in this video's description. Please go and vote. I want to take a moment and mention the challenge sponsors. They're providing some amazing prizes for the viewer entries of the Viking Challenge. Go give these guys some love. There's links down in the video description.
So here it is after the final grinding. The fuller looks really good, and of course it comes to a nice fine edge. This took a lot of time to get straight. It actually curved and took a warp during grinding because it's so thin. That I had to temper it about 4 or 5 more times after this just to straighten it out. So I've done some hand sanding up to 220, and that's what the sword looks like so far, so looking really good. Now it's time to think about some fittings. So I think I'm going to go into the scrap bin and see what I got. Alright, let's check the scrap Damascus bin. No. Copper. This might just work. So I've cut up this twist Damascus. This one's going to be used for the guard, which is going to look something like this. And it'll, from top down, looks like that. And then the pommel, which is going to be about here. So I'm going to just forge these a little bit. Just because I want to grind a lot into these, because twist always looks better when you grind into it. So let's get it done. So here they are after forging. Should fit this pretty nicely. Again, it looks rough because I want to grind a whole bunch off this because twist always looks better when you grind into it. And then this is the block I'm going to use for the pommel. Alright, lots of grinding. So here's the guard so far. Quite a bit of grinding done on it, quite a bit smaller, which is good. Now I'm just going to take it to the mill. I want this part flat. So I've done a bunch of work on the guard. I've slotted it and it fits really well on the sword. I've also sanded it to 220, so we're pretty much ready to go on this one. We'll talk about next steps on that. This is just the pommel. I've just basically squared it up on the mill. And the reason I use the mill is just because I want it pretty accurate, because I'm going to be drilling a hole. And I want that hole to be dead center. That's going to be for this. This is a piece of explosion damascus that was forged into a cylinder for this build over here. And so that's one of the stars that you see.
For the end radius, I decided to use my Tornado attachment from Eccentric Engineering. Really cool tool.
I'm really pleased how the pommel nut turned out. It fits in here just about perfectly. It's a little bit snug and you can't even tell the seam. So obviously this is going to be all ground and shaped, but I'm really pleased with it. So here's a little check-in of how we're doing so far. So got the pommel and the guard all done and put the handle on it. There you can see the fit up on the handle. I still need to take it down a little more because I'm going to be putting shark skin on the handle and it's going to have, yeah, it's about that, a little thicker than that. So I'll take this down a little more. But before we do that, let's go cut something. Well, that was really fun. I'm happy with the balance on it. It feels really good. The only thing that I'm going to change, which I kind of suspected, was that these edges on the pommel are just a little sharp. So I'm going to round these over. But other than that, I think we're ready for the inlay.
Doing the gold inlay just involves cutting a channel, doing a little dovetail at the bottom, and then squishing the 24 karat gold inside. Now I have to harden the fittings so that the damascus looks nice and bright.
So here are the fittings. I've already heat treated them and tempered them. And don't worry about these. That looks like gaps. This is just some scale over top of the gold. Once it's sanded, this will all be a nice, beautiful, continuous line. So let's talk about the handle. This is a piece of shark skin, and that's what I'm covering the handle with. I really love the look of it, and I'm just doing some cross stitching across here. It is finally time to etch this blade. I've got it sanded all the way up to 2000 grit. We're going to be using some gator piss. This is from Baker Forge and Tool. It's specially designed etchant, and it should leave the damascus, the shiny part, the 5920, super shiny, and leave the blacks super black.